we go back to the old days, what can you remember about what there was in the way of shops and businesses?
Yes, there was dear Mrs. Bergman and Mr. Bergman. They had a shop down near the church, and I can remember the head teacher at the time, Mrs. Hobbs, who was lovely. Norma, will you go and collect whatever from the village shop? And I loved doing that. That was much better than doing maths or English. So I would enjoy things like that. So there was Mrs. Bergman, there was a butcher's shop, and the butchers would come around, did a country round, and they would leave meat in our milk churn at the end of the lane. They did that.
So tell me about the butchers. Where was
The
that?
butcher's shop is, or used to be down, oh goodness.
Big Goods, was it?
Yes, Big Goods, that's right. Sorry, I couldn't remember. I remember the butcher's shop there, Mrs. Pester. She used to help the Lakes. And yes, so I remember going to the butcher's. And a funny little story, much later in life, we had holiday makers at the farm, and Mr. and Mrs. Kettle from London were staying, and they said to Mum and Dad, Gladys, I need some meat. So Mum said, all right, we'll go to the butcher's in Kingsnipton. So my mother said, this lady would like some dog's meat. And she said, no, I don't want dog's meat. She said, I want steak. And this was for the dog. So my mother was horrified because, you know, we hadn't done things like this for our dogs on the farm. They were well fed, but not with steak from the butcher's, which horrified my mum. So I do remember the butcher's, it was good, and Mrs. Bergman's, and then there was a little shop, Miss Law, and she was up very near to the Firs. This is what we used to call the square at Kingsnipton, and became the pub, I think was the pub then, and next door was the Firs, which my grandparents retired to, and the building adjoining was a little shop which belonged to Miss Sally Law, a tiny little shop which was only about the size of a cupboard, but we used to love to go in there and spend just a few pennies that we had for pocket money. And I remember we'd go in there and get whatever. And it was such a tiny little shop, not much bigger in my memory than a cupboard, but I'm sure it was bigger than that. But she stocked lots of things, which was very, very useful for the village. One of the things was paraffin. You'd go in and you'd have this awful smell of paraffin. So I can remember paraffin, but yeah, I think, well, all the things, flour, I suppose, and sugar, and all the everyday things, soap, smelly old things. I remember some of it was, but I do remember the paraffin. People coming with a little gallon can. I didn't do that, obviously, because we had the farm, but people from the village would come in and buy paraffin because we all had oil lamps in those very early days.